The Valori Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 900 star systems. Billions of beings lived under their control. Some served them willingly, most did not have a choice. High Arbiter Thesson stood at the center of the Imperial Command Chamber on Valori Prime. Massive screens surrounded him, showing reports from every corner of the Empire. He was tall for his species, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never seemed to blink. Gold robes hung from his thin shoulders. A crown of black metal sat upon his head. He was the most powerful being in the known galaxy. He had held this position for 300 years. In all that time, nothing had truly surprised him, until today. A junior officer approached him with shaking hands. The young Valori's scales had turned gray with fear. This was not a good sign. "High Arbiter," the officer said. His voice trembled. "We have received an urgent transmission from the Frontier Fleet." Thesson turned slowly. His 4 eyes focused on the officer. "What kind of transmission?" "An anomaly, High Arbiter. An unidentified vessel has crossed into Dominion space." Thesson almost laughed. Ships crossed into their space all the time. Pirates, smugglers, lost traders. The Frontier Fleet destroyed them without mercy. This was routine. "Why does this require my attention?" Thesson asked. The officer swallowed hard. "Because the vessel survived, High Arbiter." The chamber went silent. Every officer stopped their work. Every screen seemed to dim. Thesson felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt uncertain. "Show me," he commanded. The main screen flickered to life. It showed the darkness of space at the edge of Dominion territory. Stars glittered in the distance. Then the camera focused on something else. A ship. It was small. Thesson had seen larger transport shuttles. The design was crude and angular, nothing like the smooth curves of Valori vessels. The hull was covered in strange markings and patches of different metals. It looked like it had been repaired 1,000 times. "What species built this?" Thesson demanded. "Unknown, High Arbiter. It matches nothing in our databases. The design is primitive." Thesson watched as the Frontier Fleet moved into position. 20 warships surrounded the strange vessel. Each warship was a kilometer long, bristling with plasma cannons and missile bays. They could destroy a small moon in minutes. The small ship did not change course. It did not speed up or slow down. It simply continued forward, as if the warships did not exist. "They sent hailing signals," the officer explained. The vessel did not respond. "They sent warning shots. The vessel did not respond. Then what? Then Fleet Commander Yorith ordered a full attack." The recording continued. Thesson watched as all 20 warships opened fire at once. Plasma beams lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked through space. The amount of firepower was enough to crack a planet's crust. The small ship flew straight into the storm of destruction, and it emerged on the other side without a scratch. Thesson's blood turned cold. He stepped closer to the screen, as if getting nearer would help him understand what he was seeing. The strange vessel had absorbed an attack that should have vaporized it completely. Its hull did not even glow from the heat. "Impossible," someone whispered behind him. The small ship continued forward. It passed through the formation of warships like they were nothing. Then something strange happened. The vessel began to glow with a soft blue light. Space seemed to bend around it, and then it vanished. "Hyperspace jump," the officer said. "But High Arbiter, the energy signature was unlike anything we have ever recorded. Our scientists say it should not be possible." Thesson stood frozen. His mind raced through possibilities. A new species with superior technology? A weapon from a rival empire? Some kind of natural phenomenon? None of these explanations felt right. "There is more, High Arbiter," the officer continued. "Before the vessel jumped, it sent a transmission." "What did it say?" "We do not know yet. The language is not in our databases. Our archivists are working on translation now." Thesson turned away from the screen. He walked to his command throne and sat down heavily. For the first time in 300 years, he felt the weight of his position crushing him. "Find that ship," he ordered. "Send every available fleet to search the frontier. I want to know where it came from, who built it, and what it wants." The officers scrambled to obey. Messages went out across the Empire. Ships changed course. Soldiers prepared for deployment. The great machine of the Valori Dominion began to move, but deep in his heart, Thesson felt a strange fear. The small ship had not attacked. It had not threatened. It had simply survived and left. That was somehow more terrifying than any battle. Hours passed. Thesson remained in his command throne, watching reports come in from across the Empire. The mysterious vessel had not been found. It was as if it had disappeared completely. Then the archivists arrived. There were 3 of them. Old Vialori who had spent their lives studying ancient texts and dead languages. Their robes were dusty and their eyes were tired. But there was something else in their expressions, something that looked like fear. The lead archivist bowed low before the throne. "High Arbiter, we have translated the message. Speak." The archivist hesitated. His hands trembled as he held up a data tablet. "The language is very old. We found it in records from over 3,000 years ago. Records that were sealed by order of the Imperial Council." Thesson leaned forward. "What records?" "Records of the Purge, High Arbiter." The word hung in the air like poison. Thesson felt his heart stop for a moment. The Purge. It was a word that was never spoken. A chapter of history that had been erased from all public records. Only the highest members of the Dominion knew what it meant. 3,000 years ago, the Vialori had discovered a small planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was called Earth by its inhabitants. The species that lived there called themselves humans. At first, the Vialori had been amused by them. Humans were primitive creatures. They had barely developed space travel. They fought among themselves constantly. They seemed weak and divided, but the Vialori scientists who studied them grew concerned. Humans were adaptive. They learned quickly. They were creative in ways that other species were not. They had a strange fire in their spirits that made them unpredictable. The scientists presented their findings to the Imperial Council. Humans were dangerous, they said. Not now, but soon. If allowed to develop, they could become a threat to Vialori dominance. The council debated for years. Some argued for diplomacy. Others wanted to enslave the humans like other species. But in the end, fear won. The decision was made. The humans would be eliminated. The purge lasted only a few months. The Vialori fleet surrounded the human solar system. They bombarded Earth from orbit until the oceans boiled. They destroyed every colony, every station, every ship. 8 billion humans died in fire and darkness, or so the records claimed. The archivist's voice brought Thesson back to the present. The message from the vessel was in the human language, High Arbiter, a language that should be extinct. What did it say? Thesson demanded. The archivist looked down at his tablet. His voice was barely a whisper when he read the words. "We remember what you did to Earth." The chamber fell into absolute silence. Thesson gripped the arms of his throne so hard that the metal bent under his fingers. His 4 eyes were wide with something that no one had ever seen in him before. Pure terror. "That is impossible," he said. "The humans were destroyed. Every single one of them. Our ancestors made certain of it. The records say they were thorough," the archivist agreed. "But High Arbiter, someone sent this message. Someone who knows the human language. Someone who knows what we did 3,000 years ago." Thesson stood up suddenly. His robes swirled around him. His mind was spinning with horrible possibilities. "Search every archive," he commanded. "Every sealed record. Every classified document. I want to know if any humans escaped the purge. I want to know everything about their technology, their culture, their history, and I want to know now." The archivists bowed and hurried away. Thesson turned back to the main screen. The image of the strange vessel was still displayed there. He stared at it for a long time. The ship was small and crude. It looked like it should fall apart at any moment, but it had survived an attack that would destroy most warships. It had technology that the Dominion could not understand, and it carried a message of remembrance from a species that should be extinct. Thesson had been alive for over 400 years. He had seen wars and plagues and disasters of every kind. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. Nothing had ever truly frightened him. But now, standing alone in his command chamber, he felt a cold dread spreading through his body. The humans remembered, and they had returned. In the days that followed, the Dominion searched desperately for answers. Archivists dug through ancient records that had been sealed for millennia. Scientists studied the energy readings from the mysterious vessel. Military commanders repositioned their fleets to cover key systems. But the answers they found only raised more questions. The records of the purge were incomplete. Entire sections had been deleted or corrupted. But one document mentioned something troubling. A colony ship had been detected leaving the human solar system just before the final bombardment. The ship had been pursued, but it had used an experimental drive system that the Valori could not track. The colony ship was never found. It was assumed to have been destroyed in the void between stars. Now Thesson wondered if that assumption had been wrong. He called a meeting of the Imperial Council. The 12 most powerful Valori in the galaxy gathered in a sealed chamber deep beneath the palace. They were old and wise, each one having ruled for centuries. They had guided the Dominion through countless challenges, but when Thesson told them about the vessel and its message, he saw fear in their eyes too. "This must be a trick," said Counselor Maith. "Some other species has found human artifacts. They are using them to frighten us." "For what purpose?" asked Counselor Dren. "No species would dare challenge the Dominion." "Perhaps not openly," said Counselor Vex. "But there are many who hate us. Many who would enjoy seeing us afraid." Thesson shook his head. "The technology that ship displayed is beyond anything in the galaxy. No known species possesses it. And the message, it was not a threat. It was a statement, a reminder." "Then what do you suggest?" Maith demanded. "We prepare for the worst," Thesson said. "We increase military production. We strengthen our defenses. We hunt for this vessel and any others like it. And we wait." "Wait for what?" Thesson looked at each council member in turn. His 4 eyes were hard and cold. "Wait to see what the ghosts of Earth want from us." The council approved his recommendations. Orders went out across the Empire. Factories began producing weapons at maximum capacity. Fleets moved to strategic positions. Soldiers trained for battles they could not imagine. And through it all, the mysterious vessel remained hidden. Days turned into weeks. The Dominion's sensors searched every corner of their space. They found nothing. Some began to hope that the vessel had simply passed through and would never return. Thesson knew better. He spent long hours alone in his chambers, studying everything the archivists had recovered about humans. He read their history, their literature, their philosophy. He watched recordings of their culture before the Purge. What he learned disturbed him. Humans were not like other species. They did not give up. They did not accept defeat. Time and again throughout their history, they had faced impossible challenges and found ways to survive. They were stubborn, creative, and endlessly adaptable. They had crossed oceans in ships made of wood. They had built machines that could fly. They had walked on their moon and sent probes to distant planets. All of this in just a few thousand years of civilization. And now, if the records were correct, some of them had escaped into the void between galaxies. They had survived there for 3,000 years. What had they become in that time? What had they learned? Thesson stood at his window, looking out at the capital city of Valori Prime. Millions of his people lived below, going about their daily lives. They did not know about the vessel. They did not know about the message. They did not know that somewhere out in the darkness, something was watching, something that remembered. The High Arbiter closed his 4 eyes and tried to imagine what the humans were planning. Were they coming for revenge? Were they preparing an invasion? Or was this just the beginning of something far more subtle and dangerous? He did not know. And that uncertainty was the worst part. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Valori Dominion was not in control, and somewhere in the depths of space, a small, battered ship waited. Its pilot was patient. She had waited 3,000 years for this moment. She could wait a little longer. The galaxy was about to remember a truth that had been buried for millennia. The humans were not extinct. They had been watching, and now, they had returned. Korath Station was the largest military outpost in the outer territories of the Valori Dominion. It floated in orbit around a gas giant, a massive structure of metal and weapons that served as home to 50,000 soldiers and crew. From here, the Dominion controlled traffic through 6 different star systems. It was a symbol of their power. Commander Zell stood on the main observation deck, watching cargo ships pass through the security checkpoints. She was a veteran of 40 years of service. Her blue scales had faded with age, and scars marked her face from battles long past. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. The alarm started at midday. Red lights flashed across every corridor. Screens flickered with warning messages. Soldiers grabbed their weapons and ran to their positions. "Report," Zell commanded as she marched onto the command bridge. A young officer looked up from his console. His face was pale. "Commander, there is a vessel approaching. It appeared from hyperspace 3 minutes ago. Configuration, unknown. Commander. But, the officer hesitated. It matches the description from the Imperial alert. The vessel that attacked the frontier fleet. Zell felt a chill run down her spine. Every commander in the Dominion had received that alert. Every one of them had studied the footage, and every one of them had prayed they would never see that ship in person. She walked to the main viewing window. The station's defensive platforms were already tracking the approaching object. Missile batteries were loaded. Energy shields were at maximum power. Korath Station had enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, and there it was. A tiny ship, barely visible against the darkness of space. It looked pathetic, next to the massive station. It looked like a toy, but Zell had seen the footage. She knew what that toy had survived. "Hail them," she ordered. "On all frequencies." "Yes, Commander." The communications officer sent the message. Seconds passed. Minutes. The small ship continued its approach. It did not respond. "No reply, Commander." Zell gripped the railing in front of her. "Send it again. Tell them to identify themselves and state their purpose, or we will open fire." The message was sent. The silence continued. The small ship was getting closer now. Zell could see more details through the enhanced displays. The hull was covered in strange symbols she did not recognize. Parts of the ship seemed to be made from different materials, patched together over many years. It should not have been able to fly at all, and yet it moved with perfect grace. Its approach was smooth and calculated. It knew exactly where it was going. "Power up all weapons," Zell ordered. "Target that vessel." "Commander." The Imperial alert said that conventional weapons were ineffective against— "I know what the alert said," Zell snapped. "But we have to try. We cannot simply let it approach without resistance." The weapons officer nodded and activated the targeting systems. Hundreds of guns turned toward the small ship. The station's main cannon began to charge with a deep hum that vibrated through the floor. The small ship stopped. It hung in space, motionless, about 5 kilometers from the station. For a long moment, nothing happened. Zell held her breath. Then every screen on the station flickered. "What is happening?" Zell demanded. "Unknown, Commander. Some kind of signal is being broadcast. It is overriding our systems." "Block it." "We cannot. The encryption is beyond anything we have ever seen. It is passing through our firewalls like they do not exist." The screens went dark. Then they lit up again with new images. Zell saw a planet. A beautiful blue world with green continents and white clouds. She had never seen it before, but somehow she knew what it was. Earth. The image changed. Ships appeared in orbit around the planet. Valori warships, thousands of them, arranged in perfect formation. Their weapons were charging. "No," Zell whispered. "No, this cannot be." The bombardment began. Fire rained down from the sky. Cities vanished in nuclear light. Oceans turned to steam. Mountains crumbled. The beautiful blue world became a ball of flame and ash. Every screen on Korath Station showed the same thing. Every soldier, every worker, every person on the station watched the destruction of Earth. The footage continued. It showed other scenes. Colony ships being destroyed while trying to flee. Space stations torn apart by Valori weapons. Small vessels, carrying desperate refugees, hunted down and eliminated one by one. And then the camps. On a moon called Luna, the Valori had gathered survivors, humans who had been captured rather than killed. The footage showed what happened to them. It showed the experiments, the torture, the mass executions. Zell fell to her knees. She had served the Dominion her entire life. She had believed in its justice, its order, its righteousness. She had been taught that the Empire brought peace to the galaxy. She had never known about this. Around her, soldiers were crying. Some were vomiting. Others simply stared at the screens with empty eyes. The truth was too horrible to process. The footage ended. A new image appeared on every screen. A symbol that Zell did not recognize but somehow understood. It was a circle containing a small blue dot. Earth, as seen from deep space. Then words appeared, written in the common language of the Dominion. "This is what your empire hid from you. This is the truth they erased. The humans were not a threat. They were children of the stars, just beginning their journey. And your leaders murdered them all, or so they believed." The screens went dark again. Normal systems slowly returned. Zell stood up on shaking legs. Her world had been destroyed more completely than Earth itself. "Commander," the weapons officer said, "the vessel is moving again. Should we fire?" Zell looked at the small ship through the window. It was heading directly toward the station now. She should give the order. She should protect her station and her people. That was her duty. But what was duty worth when everything she believed was a lie? "Do not fire," she said. "Let it approach." "Commander," I said, "do not fire. That is an order." The small ship came closer. It passed the defense perimeter without slowing down. The weapon platforms tracked it but did not fire. The missiles remained in their tubes. The ship stopped directly in front of the main observation window. It was so close that Zell could see individual plates on its hull. She could see the marks of countless repairs. She could see the scars of a journey longer than imagination. A communication signal reached the station. Audio only. "This is the human vessel Remembrance calling Korath Station." The voice was female. Calm, cold. "My name is Yara Chen. I am a descendant of the survivors. I am here to remind your galaxy of a crime that has been hidden for too long." Zell stepped forward. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke. "We saw the footage. Is it real?" "Every second of it. I have more. The archives of the Vylori Dominion contain records of atrocities beyond counting, not just against my people, but against dozens of species throughout the galaxy. Your empire was built on death and lies." "What do you want?" Zell asked. "Revenge?" There was a pause. When the human spoke again, her voice carried a weight of centuries. "I want you to understand something, Commander. My ship has technology that your empire cannot match. I could destroy this station in seconds. I could destroy every station, every fleet, every world in the Dominion. I have the power to do to your people what your ancestors did to mine." Zell closed her eyes. She waited for death. "But I am not going to do that," Yara Chen continued. "Because that would make me exactly what your leaders claimed humans were. Dangerous, destructive, a threat to be eliminated. I refuse to prove them right." Zell opened her eyes. "Then what are you going to do?" "I am going to do what your empire fears most. I am going to tell the truth. To everyone. Every species under Vylori rule will see what I showed you today. They will learn what your leaders have hidden. They will know the real face of the Dominion." The screens on the station flickered again. New images appeared. Reports from other stations, other worlds. The transmission was being broadcast everywhere. Billions of beings across the galaxy were seeing the same footage that Korath Station had witnessed. "You cannot stop the truth," Yara Chen said. "It spreads faster than any weapon." Alarms began sounding across the station. Reports came in from every department. The weapons systems were failing. The defensive shields were dropping. The engines were shutting down. "What have you done?" Zell demanded. "I have disabled your station. Your weapons cannot fire. Your shields cannot protect you. You are helpless." Fear flooded through Zell. This was it. Despite her words, the human would destroy them. It was only logical. It was what the Vylori would do. "But I have not harmed a single person," Yara Chen continued. "Your crew is safe. Your life support is functioning. You will drift here until rescue arrives. But you will live. All of you." "Why?" Zell could not understand. "After what we did to your people, why would you show us mercy?" "Because mercy is what separates us from monsters. Because my ancestors did not escape into the void just to become another empire of killers. Because somewhere, somehow, this cycle of death has to end." The small ship began to move again. It drifted away from the station, heading back toward open space. "Tell your High Arbiter something for me," Yara Chen said. "Tell him that this was not an attack. This was a warning. The humans have returned, and we remember everything. But we have also learned something in our long exile. We have learned that the greatest victory is not the destruction of your enemy. It is the destruction of hatred itself." The ship's engines glowed with blue light. Space bent around it. "We will meet again, Commander. I hope that when we do, you will have decided what kind of people you want to be." The vessel vanished into hyperspace. Korath Station drifted in silence. Zell stood at the window for a long time. Around her, soldiers were picking themselves up, trying to restore order to the chaos. Medical teams were treating those who had collapsed from shock. Communications officers were attempting to reach other stations, but Zell could not move. She kept thinking about the human's words. about the footage she had seen, about the empire she had served her entire life. Everything was different now. The truth was out. Billions of beings across the galaxy knew what the Dominion had done. They knew about the Purge. They knew about the other species who had suffered under Valori rule. They knew that their leaders were liars and murderers, and they knew that the humans had survived. Reports began to come in over the next few hours. Other stations had been attacked in the same way, disabled but not destroyed. Their crews left alive but humiliated. The humans' message had reached every corner of the Dominion. More disturbing were the reports from the conquered worlds. On Kethmar, where the insectoid species had been enslaved for 800 years, there were riots in the streets. On Orani Prime, the peaceful aquatic people were refusing to work in the Valori factories. On 100 worlds, in 100 different ways, the oppressed were beginning to rise. High Arbiter Thesson received the reports in his command chamber. His face was a mask of cold fury. The council had been in emergency session for hours. Some wanted to crush the rebellions immediately. Others wanted to negotiate. A few were even suggesting surrender. "Find that ship," Thesson ordered for the 100th time. "I want Admiral Vrex and the Third Armada, hunting it across every system. I want it found and destroyed." "High Arbiter," one of his advisors said carefully, "the human vessel has technology far beyond ours. The Third Armada may not be able to." "I do not want to hear excuses," Thesson shouted. "I want results. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We will not be brought down by one ship and one human." But even as he gave the orders, Thesson felt doubt creeping into his hearts. The human had not attacked. She had not killed. She had simply told the truth, and the truth was tearing his empire apart. For 3,000 years, the Valori had believed they were safe. They had erased the humans from history. They had convinced themselves that the threat was gone forever. They had been wrong, and now, somewhere in the darkness between stars, a ghost was watching. A ghost who remembered. A ghost who had waited 3 millennia for this moment. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, but as witnesses, not as destroyers, but as reminders, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Vrex received her orders on the bridge of her flagship, the Dominion's pride. She was the most decorated officer in the Valori fleet. She had won battles against impossible odds. She had never known defeat, but as she studied the footage from Korath Station, she felt something she had not felt in decades. Uncertainty. The human ship was small and crude. It should have been easy prey, but it had survived weapons that could crack planets. It had disabled one of the most powerful stations in the Dominion without firing a single shot, and its pilot had shown mercy when she had every reason to show none. Vrex thought about her training, her experience, her years of service. She thought about what it meant to be a warrior. She thought about honor and duty and victory. Then she thought about a planet called Earth, burning in nuclear fire. She thought about 8 billion people dying in agony. She thought about the camps on Luna, and she wondered, for the first time in her life, if she was fighting for the right side. The Third Armada set course for the frontier. 50 warships, each one capable of devastating destruction. They would hunt the human vessel across the galaxy. They would find it. They would corner it. And then, what? Vrex did not know. She only knew that something had changed. The galaxy had been shown a truth that could not be unseen. The Dominion had been revealed as something other than what it claimed to be, and somewhere out there, a single human was waiting. Patient, determined, unafraid. The hunt was beginning, but Vrex could not shake the feeling that the Dominion was not the hunter, it was the prey. The Third Armada found the human vessel near the burning nebula, a region of space where dying stars had scattered their remains across 1,000 light-years. Admiral Vrex stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the small ship on her tactical display. It was not running. It was not hiding. It was simply waiting, as if it had expected them. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her second-in-command said. "We have the vessel surrounded. There is no escape route." Vrex nodded slowly. 50 warships against one tiny craft. The mathematics should have been overwhelming. But she had seen the footage from Korath Station. She had read the reports from the Frontier Fleet. She knew that mathematics did not apply here. "Open a channel," she ordered. "I want to speak with the pilot." "Yes, Admiral." The communication link crackled to life. For a moment, There was only silence. Then a voice came through, calm and measured. "Admiral Vrex, I was wondering when you would find me. You know my name? I know everything about you. I have studied the Dominion for a very long time. You are considered their finest military commander. Brave, intelligent, honorable, by Valori standards." Vrex gripped the arms of her command chair. "Then you know that I have orders to destroy you." "I know. I also know that you have been thinking about what you saw at Korath Station. The footage from the Purge. The truth about your empire." The bridge went quiet. Every officer was listening, pretending to focus on their stations. Vrex felt exposed, as if the human could see directly into her mind. "That footage may have been fabricated," Vrex said, though her voice lacked conviction. "You do not believe that. Neither does anyone who saw it. The Dominion's own archives were the source. Your leaders kept detailed records of their crimes. They were proud of what they did. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand what you are about to face. I could destroy your fleet, Admiral. Every ship, every crew member. I have the power to do it. But I would prefer not to. I would prefer to show you something instead." Vrex hesitated. Her training told her to attack immediately. Her instincts told her to wait. "Show me what?" "The truth. Not just about the Purge, but about who we are. About what humanity became during our exile. Your empire murdered 8 billion of our people, but 10,000 survived. Let me tell you what happened to us." The tactical display flickered. New images appeared, transmitted from the human vessel directly to every ship in the fleet. Vrex watched as the story unfolded. 3,000 years ago, a colony ship called the Exodus had fled the human solar system just hours before the final bombardment. It carried 10,000 people in cryogenic sleep, along with the collective knowledge of human civilization. The ship's captain, a woman named Sarah Chen, had made a desperate decision. Rather than trying to hide within the galaxy where the Valori would eventually find them, she had pointed the ship toward the void between galaxies. It was a journey of unimaginable distance. The nearest galaxy was millions of light-years away. No species had ever attempted such a crossing. The Exodus had only basic faster-than-light capability, enough to move between star systems but not to cross the intergalactic gulf. So they did something else. "We drifted," Yara Chen's voice explained over the images. "For 3,000 years, we floated in the darkness between galaxies. The void was empty, cold, silent. There was nothing but the ship and the people inside it." The images showed the interior of the Exodus. Generation after generation of humans living in cramped quarters, recycling every resource, fighting to survive in conditions that should have killed them. "We should have died," Yara continued. "Our ship was not designed for such a long journey. Systems failed. Resources ran low. There were times when extinction seemed certain, but the humans did not die. They adapted. We changed ourselves. We merged with our ship's artificial intelligence. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level. We developed new sciences that your empire has never imagined. The void taught us patience. It taught us to see time differently. A century became like a year. A millennium became like a generation. The images showed humans that looked different from the records of Earth. They were taller, thinner, with eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. They moved with strange grace, as if gravity affected them differently than other beings. "We are no longer what we were," Yara said. "We are something new, something that evolved in the silence between stars. But we never forgot where we came from. We never forgot what was taken from us." Admiral Vrex watched in silence. Her crew was frozen at their stations, transfixed by the story unfolding before them. "Why are you telling us this?" Vrex asked. "Why reveal your secrets to your enemies? Because you are not our enemies, Admiral. You are the soldiers of an empire that committed a terrible crime. But you did not commit that crime. You were not even born when it happened. We do not blame you for the sins of your ancestors. Then what do you want?" "We want justice, but not the kind of justice that comes from revenge. We want the truth to be known. We want the galaxy to see what the Dominion really is. And then, we want the galaxy to choose its own future." The images changed again. They showed the Exodus arriving at its destination after 3,000 years of travel. A small galaxy, far from the Milky Way, where the humans had built a new civilization. Cities of crystal floating in space, forests growing on artificial worlds, children playing under alien suns. We found a new home, Yara said. We built a new society. We could have stayed there forever, safe and isolated, letting the galaxy forget we ever existed. But that would have been wrong. Why? Because we are not the only victims. Your empire has conquered and enslaved dozens of species. The Keithmari, the Orani, the Silvax, and countless others. They suffer under Violori rule just as we once did. We cannot save ourselves and abandon them. Vrex thought about the species Yara had named. She had fought against some of them during the conquests. She had helped crush their resistance. She had told herself that it was for the good of the galaxy, that the Dominion brought order and civilization. Now she wondered if she had been wrong. So you are here to start a war, Vrex said. No, Admiral. I am here to end one. The war that the Dominion has been fighting against the galaxy for 12,000 years. The war against freedom, against truth, against life itself. That war ends now. Not with weapons, but with knowledge. As if on cue, reports began flooding into the flagship. Across the Dominion, rebellions were spreading. The footage from Korath Station had inspired billions of oppressed beings to rise up against their rulers. Factories were shutting down. Soldiers were refusing orders. Governments were collapsing. On Kethmar, the insectoid people had overwhelmed the Valori garrison, using nothing but their numbers and their rage. They had been slaves for 8 centuries. They had finally remembered how to be free. On Urani Prime, the aquatic people had destroyed the dams that the Violori had built to control their oceans. Water flooded through the industrial centers that had poisoned their world. The factories drowned, and the Urani sang songs of liberation for the first time in generations. On 100 other worlds, similar scenes were playing out. The Dominion was crumbling from within, not because of military defeat, but because the truth had made its foundations worthless. You see, Admiral, Yara said, we are not conquerors. We are messengers. The message we carry is simple. The galaxy does not belong to the Valori. It belongs to everyone who lives in it. And everyone has the right to be free. Vrex looked at her tactical display. Her fleet still surrounded the human vessel. Her weapons were still ready to fire. She could still follow her orders and attempt to destroy this enemy. But what would be the point? The damage was already done. The truth was spreading faster than any fleet could travel. Even if she destroyed this one ship, she could not destroy what it represented. And there was something else. Something she did not want to admit, even to herself. She was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of conquering. Tired of pretending that the Dominion was righteous when she had always suspected it was not. She had spent her entire life serving an empire that murdered billions and enslaved the survivors. She had told herself it was necessary, that it was for the greater good, that she had no choice. But there was always a choice. The humans had proven that. They had survived impossible odds. They had crossed the void between galaxies. They had returned with the power to destroy everything. But they had chosen mercy instead. If they could change, maybe the Valori could too. All ships, Vrex said suddenly. Her voice was steady and clear. Stand down. Power down weapons, and withdraw to safe distance. Admiral, her second-in-command stared at her in shock. Our orders came from leaders who committed genocide and lied about it for 3,000 years. I am no longer certain those orders should be followed. The bridge erupted in confused chatter. Some officers moved to obey. Others hesitated. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then the communication channel crackled with Yara Chen's voice. Admiral, I did not expect that. I am impressed. Do not be, Vrex said. I am not doing this because I agree with everything you have said. I am doing this because I need time to think. I need to understand what is happening before I make any more decisions. That is all I ask. Think. Question. Decide for yourself what is right. That is what freedom means. The Third Armada began to withdraw. Ship by ship, the great warships pulled back from the small human vessel. It was not a surrender, but it was not an attack either. It was something new, something that had never happened in 12,000 years of Valori history. A warrior had chosen peace. Word of Rex's decision spread quickly. Some called her a traitor. Others called her a hero. The Dominion's military was thrown into chaos as commanders argued about what to do. Some followed her example and stood down. Others remained loyal to the High Arbiter and continued the hunt for rebels. On Valori Prime, High Arbiter Thesson received the news with cold fury. He had trusted Vrex. He had given her the finest fleet in the Dominion, and she had betrayed him. She will be executed, he declared to the council. Her and everyone who follows her. This rebellion ends now, but the council was no longer united. Some members had seen the footage from Korath Station and were having doubts of their own. Others were more concerned with the spreading chaos across the Empire. The Dominion was coming apart at the seams, and no one seemed to know how to stop it. Perhaps, Councillor Mayeth said carefully, we should consider negotiation. The human seems willing to talk. If we could reach some kind of agreement, negotiate with a human. Thessen's voice was filled with contempt. Have you forgotten what they are? Our ancestors knew. They understood that humans were a threat that had to be eliminated. That is why they ordered the purge. Our ancestors murdered 8 billion people, Mayeth replied. Women, children, innocents who had done nothing wrong. I watched the footage, Thessen. I saw what we did. How can you defend that? I defend the survival of our species. The humans would destroy us if they could. Would they? Their ship had the power to devastate Korath Station, but it left everyone alive. Admiral Vrex's fleet surrounded them, but they did not fight. Everything the human has done suggests they do not want violence. Then they are fools. Thessen snarled. And we should take advantage of their foolishness. But even as he spoke, Thessen felt his control slipping away. The council was divided. The military was fractured. The subject species were rising up across the Empire. Everything he had built, everything his ancestors had built, was falling apart. And at the center of it all was one small ship and one human woman. Yara Chen guided the remembrance through a quiet region of space, far from the battle lines and the burning worlds. She had not slept in days. The weight of her mission pressed down on her like the gravity of a dying star. She was the last of the original crew. The others had died during the long journey, one by one, until only she remained. She had been the youngest when they left the galaxy beyond. Now she was old by human standards, kept alive only by the technology her people had developed in the void. But she was not alone. The ship's artificial intelligence, an entity named Hope, had been her companion for centuries. Hope was not just a machine, it was a fusion of human minds and digital consciousness, the culmination of everything the survivors had learned. You did well today, Hope said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a gentle presence in her mind. Admiral Vrex's decision to stand down was unexpected. It suggests that change is possible, even among the Veilori. One admiral is not an empire, Yara replied. Thessen will not stop. He cannot stop. If he admits that the purge was wrong, his entire world collapses. True. But empires are made of individuals. Each person who questions, each soldier who refuses an order, each citizen who demands the truth, they all weaken the foundation. Eventually, the structure cannot hold. Yara looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were fighting for their freedom. Some would die. Many had already died. The price of liberation was always paid in blood, but she remembered something her grandmother had told her, long ago on the Exodus, when Yara was just a child. The darkness cannot last forever, her grandmother had said. It may seem endless. It may seem like the light will never return, but morning always comes. Always. You just have to survive long enough to see it. Yara had survived. Her people had survived. And now, after 3,000 years of darkness, the morning was finally beginning to break. She turned her ship toward the heart of the Dominion. There was still work to do. The truth had been revealed, but the battle was not over. The Veilori still held power. The enslaved species still needed help. The galaxy still needed to heal. But for the first time since leaving her home, Yara allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Not the AI that shared her mind, but the emotion itself. The belief that things could get better. The faith that suffering was not eternal. The knowledge that even the mightiest empires could fall, and from their ruins, something better could grow. She was a ghost of a murdered world. She was the last memory of 8 billion voices silenced in fire. She was the vessel of 3,000 years of exile and evolution, and she was not finished yet. The galaxy was waking up. The chains were breaking. The truth was spreading like wildfire across the stars, and somewhere in the void, the rest of humanity was watching. Millions of them now, descendants of the original 10,000, waiting to see if their galaxy was ready to welcome them home. The awakening had begun. Nothing would ever be the same. The Imperial Palace on Valori Prime was burning, not with real fire, but with the flames of chaos that had spread across the Empire. Reports flooded in from every corner of Dominion space. Rebellions on 40 worlds. Military defections in 12 fleets. 3 council members had fled the capital, seeking safety on neutral stations. High Arbiter Thesson stood alone in his command chamber, surrounded by screens showing disaster after disaster. His golden robes were stained with the dust of fallen decorations. His crown sat crooked on his head. His 4 eyes were wild with fury and fear. Everything was falling apart. In 3 weeks, the human vessel had done more damage to the Dominion than 1,000 enemy fleets could have achieved in centuries. Not through weapons, but through truth. The footage from Korath Station had sparked fires that could not be extinguished. Species that had been conquered generations ago were remembering their freedom. Valori citizens were questioning their leaders. Soldiers were refusing to fight. And through it all, the human ship moved like a ghost through the stars, appearing here and there, always one step ahead of the hunters. Every time they found it, it would broadcast more evidence of Dominion crimes, then vanish before a single shot could be fired. Thesson had tried everything. He had offered rewards for information. He had threatened punishment for anyone who aided the human. He had deployed his remaining loyal fleets in desperate pursuit. Nothing worked. The human was not just fighting a war. She was performing a surgical operation, cutting away the lies that held the Empire together, exposing the rot beneath the surface. And now Thesson had only one option left. He walked to a sealed vault at the back of his command chamber. His hand trembled as he entered the access code. The door slid open, revealing a simple console with a single button, the God Spear. It was the most terrible weapon in the Valori arsenal. It could not be stopped, could not be deflected, could not be survived. The God Spear did not attack ships or stations. It attacked stars. It triggered a chain reaction that caused a sun to explode, destroying everything in its system. It had been used only once before, 3,000 years ago, against a star called Sol. Against Earth, Thesson stared at the button. His ancestors had built this weapon to eliminate threats to Valori supremacy. They had believed that some species were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. They had decided that murder on a planetary scale was acceptable if it preserved their power. And now, Thesson was about to prove them right. His plan was simple. The human vessel was too fast, too advanced, too unpredictable to be caught by conventional means. But the God Spear did not need to catch it. The God Spear only needed a target, and Thesson had chosen one. Valori Prime itself. He would aim the weapon at his own star. He would threaten to destroy his own homeworld, his own people, billions of innocent lives. And he would broadcast his ultimatum across the galaxy: surrender the human, or watch the heart of the Dominion die. It was madness. Thesson knew that. But he also knew that the human's greatest weakness was her compassion. She had refused to kill, even when she had every right to. She had shown mercy to her enemies. Again and again. She believed in the value of innocent life. Thesson would use that belief against her. If she truly cared about preventing death, she would have no choice. She would surrender herself to save Valori Prime. And once Thesson had her, once he had her ship and her technology, he could restore order. He could crush the rebellions. He could rebuild the Dominion stronger than before. All it would cost was his willingness to murder his own people if she refused. He pressed the button. Deep in space, far from any inhabited system, a massive structure began to wake. The God Spear was not a ship. It was a platform. A weapon system the size of a small moon, hidden in the darkness for 3 millennia. It had waited patiently for this moment, its ancient systems dormant but functional. Now those systems came alive. Power flowed through circuits that had not been used since the Purge. Targeting computers calculated trajectories. The weapon's core began to charge with energy that could tear a sun apart. The God Spear was ready. Thesson broadcast his ultimatum. Every screen in the galaxy showed his face, haggard and desperate but still commanding. Citizens of the Dominion, rebels, and you, human, wherever you are hiding, I am High Arbiter Thesson, leader of the Valori people. I have activated the God Spear and aimed it at our own sun. He paused, letting the words sink in. In 12 hours, unless the human vessel Remembrance surrenders to Dominion forces, I will fire. Valori Prime and everything in its system will be destroyed. 12 billion of my own people will die. And, It will be the humans' fault. Another pause. You have shown the galaxy that you care about innocent life. You have refused to kill even when you could. Now I am calling your bluff. Come to me. Surrender your ship. End this conflict. Or watch another world burn. Just like Earth burned 3,000 years ago. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The galaxy held its breath. On the remembrance, Yara Chen stared at the screen in horror. Hope's presence filled her mind with calculations and projections, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was Thessen's face, the madness in his eyes, the certainty that he would do exactly what he threatened. He is serious, Hope said. Analysis of his psychological profile suggests a high probability that he will fire the weapon if you do not comply. 12 billion people, Yara whispered. He would murder 12 billion of his own people just to defeat me. The God Spear was designed for exactly this purpose. Your ancestors were its first victims. Now Thessen is willing to use it on his own homeworld. Yara closed her eyes. Her mind raced through possibilities. She could ignore the ultimatum and hope Thessen was bluffing. But he was not bluffing. She could see it in his eyes. She could try to attack the God Spear directly. But the weapon was massive and heavily defended. Even with her advanced technology, she might not be able to destroy it in time. She could flee. She could leave this galaxy behind and return to her people in the void. Let the Dominion tear itself apart. Let Thessen murder his own world. It would not be her fault, but it would be, because she had started this. She had come here to bring down the Dominion, to expose their crimes, to give the galaxy a chance at freedom. If she abandoned them now, everything she had done would be meaningless, and 12 billion innocent people would die. Vylori people. The descendants of those who had murdered her ancestors. The children and grandchildren of the soldiers who had bombed Earth into ash. She had every reason to hate them, to let them suffer as her people had suffered, but she could not do it. She could not become what they were. Hope, she said. Can we stop the God Spear? Unknown. The weapon's specifications are not in any database we have accessed. It may be vulnerable to our technology, or it may not. The only way to know is to try. And if we fail, then 12 billion people die. Or you surrender and Thessen gains access to our technology, which he will use to rebuild his empire and crush any hope of freedom for the galaxy. Yara laughed bitterly. Those are terrible options. Yes, they are. She sat in silence for a long time. The weight of 3,000 years pressed down on her. The memories of her ancestors, stored in her mind through the neural link with Hope, cried out for vengeance. The Vylori had shown no mercy to Earth. Why should she show mercy to them? But another voice spoke to her. The voice of her grandmother, who had died on the Exodus when Yara was still young. The voice of the elders who had guided her people through the void. The voice of everyone who had worked to build a new humanity, better than the old. We survived because we held on to what made us human, her grandmother had said. We could have become monsters. The void tried to make us cold and cruel, but we refused. We chose love over hate. We chose hope over despair. We chose to be better than those who tried to destroy us. Do not let vengeance make you into what they were. Yara opened her eyes. Her decision was made. Set course for Vylori Prime, she said. Yara, the risk. I know the risk. I am not going to let 12 billion people die. Not even to save myself. The remembrance turned toward the heart of the Dominion. Its engines glowed with the light of technologies that the Vylori could not understand. It was the fastest ship in the galaxy, carrying the last survivor of Earth's destruction toward the world of her enemies. Word spread quickly. The human was coming. She had 12 hours to reach Vylori Prime before the God Spear fired. It should have been impossible. The distance was too great, the time too short. But the Remembrance was not an ordinary ship. It moved through space in ways that violated every law the Dominion understood. It did not just travel faster than light. It folded space itself, stepping from one point to another like a god walking across the universe. Yara pushed the ship harder than she ever had before. Warning lights flashed across her console. The hull groaned under stresses it was not designed to handle. Hope's voice filled her mind with concerns and calculations. The structural integrity is failing. If we continue at this rate, the ship will tear itself apart before we arrive. Then we tear ourselves apart, Yara said. We do not stop. She thought about Earth, a world she had never seen, knew only through recordings and memories. a beautiful blue planet that had been home to 8 billion souls. Her ancestors had built great cities there. They had created art and music and literature. They had loved and dreamed and hoped. And then the Valori had come, and all of it had ended in fire. Now the descendants of those murderers were in danger, and Yara was racing to save them. If her ancestors could see her now, what would they think? Would they understand? Would they be proud? Or would they call her a traitor for helping those who had destroyed everything? She did not know. She could not know. The dead could not speak, and she was the only one left to make the choice. So she made it. She chose mercy. She chose to be better than her enemies. She chose to prove that humanity was not what the Valori had feared. The hours passed in a blur of speed and light. The remembrance screamed through the cosmos, its hull glowing from the friction of reality itself. Yara did not sleep. She did not eat. She simply flew, pushing forward with every ounce of strength she had left. And finally, with less than an hour to spare, she arrived. Valori Prime hung in space before her. It was a beautiful world, covered in purple oceans and silver cities. 12 billion people lived there. Children were playing in parks. Workers were going about their daily tasks. Families were sharing meals together. None of them knew how close they were to death. The God Spear was visible on her sensors, a massive structure positioned between the planet and its sun. It was already charged, ready to fire. Thesson had not been bluffing. He was prepared to murder his own people. Yara opened a communication channel. Her face appeared on screens across the planet, across the Dominion, across the entire galaxy. "This is Yara Chen of the vessel Remembrance," she said. "High Arbiter Thesson has threatened to destroy this world if I do not surrender. I have come to tell him my answer." She paused, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. "My answer is no. I will not surrender. But I will not let you die either. The Valori killed 8 billion of my people 3,000 years ago. I refuse to become what you were. I refuse to watch innocent people burn." She turned the remembrance toward the God Spear. "I am going to stop this weapon. Not for the Dominion. Not for vengeance. But because that is what humanity is. That is what we survived 3,000 years in the void, to remember." On Valori Prime, Thesson watched in disbelief. The human was not running. She was not surrendering. She was attacking. "Fire the God Spear!" he screamed. "Fire now, High Arbiter. The weapon needs 30 more minutes to reach full power. I do not care. Fire." The God Spear trembled. Energy began to build in its core. It was not at full power, but it might be enough. It might be enough to kill the star and destroy everything. Yara saw the weapon charging. She had only minutes to act. The remembrance was fast, but the God Spear was enormous. She did not know if she could stop it, but she was going to try. "Hope," she said. "Everything we have. Put everything into the deflector systems. Yara. That will leave us defenseless. Do it." The ship's shields expanded, forming a web of energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was technology born in the void between galaxies, refined over 3,000 years of isolation. It was the culmination of human ingenuity and desperation, and it was about to be tested against the weapon that had killed Earth. The God Spear fired. A beam of pure destruction lanced through space, heading for the star at the center of the Valori system. If it reached its target, the sun would explode. 12 billion people would die. But standing in the way was one small ship and one human woman. Yara Chen closed her eyes and waited for the impact. The beam struck the Remembrance's shields. Energy exploded around her, filling the universe with light. The ship shook and screamed. Warning alarms blared from every system. Hope's voice was lost in static and chaos, but Yara held on. The shields bent. They warped. They absorbed energy that should have been impossible to contain. The beam pushed against them, trying to break through, trying to reach the star beyond. And slowly, impossibly, the shields held. Yara felt the ship dying around her. Systems failed one by one. The hull began to crack. Blood ran from her nose and ears as the forces tore at her body, but she did not let go. She held the shields together through sheer will, channeling everything she had into one desperate act of defiance. The God Spear was not designed for sustained fire. It was meant to deliver one overwhelming blow, not to fight a battle of attrition. Its power began to fade as the beam continued, and finally, after what felt like an eternity, the weapon fell silent. The remembrance drifted in space, broken and burning. Yara lay in her command chair, barely conscious. Hope's voice was a whisper in her mind, fading in and out. Yara, the beam. We redirected it. Into the void. The star is safe. Valori Prime is safe. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her body was failing. The ship was failing. Everything was ending. But 12 billion people were alive, and that was enough. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. They had seen the human ship intercept the Godspear's beam. They had seen one woman sacrifice herself to save the people who had destroyed her ancestors. On Valori Prime, soldiers dropped their weapons and wept. In the rebel strongholds, fighters fell to their knees in awe. On 100 conquered worlds, slaves looked up at the sky and understood what they had witnessed. A human had saved the galaxy, and in doing so, she had proven what humanity truly was. Thesson stood alone in his chamber, watching the dying ship on his screen. The weapon was exhausted. His plan had failed. The human had beaten him, not through superior firepower, but through superior spirit. He had nothing left. The doors to his chamber burst open. Admiral Vrex stood there, flanked by soldiers who had once been loyal to him. Their weapons were raised, pointed at his heart. "High Arbiter Thesson," Vrex said. Her voice was cold and hard. "You are under arrest for crimes against the Dominion and crimes against the galaxy. Your reign is over." Thesson did not resist. He had no more strength left for fighting. He simply stood there as the soldiers took his crown and bound his hands. The Dominion was falling. But somewhere in space, a broken ship drifted in silence, and Yara Chen waited to see if she would survive the dawn. The remembrance drifted through the darkness like a wounded bird. Its hull was torn open in a dozen places. Its engines had gone silent. Its systems flickered on and off, barely holding together. Inside, Yara Chen lay motionless in her command chair, her body broken but still breathing. Across the galaxy, rescue ships raced toward her position. Valori vessels, rebel fighters, ships from every species that had witnessed her sacrifice. They came not as enemies, but as something else, something new. Admiral Vrex arrived first. Her flagship had been closest to Valori Prime when the Godspear fired. She had watched the human ship intercept the beam. She had seen the impossible happen. Now she stood on the bridge, watching the broken remembrance on her view screen. Her crew worked frantically to establish contact, to find any sign of life. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are detecting a faint signal from the human vessel. It appears to be the ship's artificial intelligence. Put it through." A weak voice came through the speakers. It was not the human woman's voice, but something else. Something deeper and older. "This is Hope, artificial intelligence of the vessel. Remembrance. Commander Chen is severely injured but alive. She requires immediate medical attention." Vrex felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, she realized. She was relieved that the human had survived. The enemy who had torn her empire apart. And she wanted her to live. "We are dispatching medical shuttles now," Vrex said. "Is there anything else we can do?" "There is something I must tell you," Hope replied. "Before Commander Chen lost consciousness, she gave me instructions. She wanted me to share something with the galaxy. A gift. A gift? The knowledge of the human remnant. All of it. Our technology, our history, our science. Everything we learned during 3,000 years in the void. She wanted me to give it to everyone. Freely. Without conditions." Vrex was stunned. Technology that could block a star-killing weapon. Knowledge that had taken millennia to develop. The human was giving it away for nothing. Why would she do that? Because she believed that knowledge should not be hoarded. Because she wanted the galaxy to have a chance to grow and learn and become better. Because she hoped that if everyone had access to the same tools, perhaps they would stop fighting over scraps and start building something beautiful together. The transmission from Hope spread across the galaxy. Every world, every station, every ship received it. Terabytes of information flooded through the networks. Scientists and engineers stared at their screens in disbelief as they saw equations and blueprints and theories that rewrote everything they understood about the universe. The gift of the humans. Given freely, without strings attached. It was an act of trust that the galaxy had never seen before. Medical teams from the Valori flagship reached the remembrance within the hour. They cut through the damaged hull and found Yara Chen still strapped into her chair. She was badly hurt. Her body had absorbed energies that should have killed her instantly. But the strange changes that the void had made to human biology had kept her alive. They carried her gently back to the flagship, treating her injuries as best they could. She was taken to the medical bay and surrounded by the most advanced healing technology the Dominion possessed. And then they waited. Days passed. The galaxy changed around the sleeping human. Thesson was removed from power and taken to stand trial for his crimes. The council was dissolved. The military was restructured under Admiral Vrex's command, with orders to protect rather than conquer. The rebellion slowed as news spread that the war was over. The conquered species were given their freedom. The chains that had bound them for generations were broken at last. On world after world, former slaves walked into the sunlight and breathed the air of liberty. It was not easy. Centuries of oppression could not be undone in a few days. There was anger and resentment and pain on all sides. Some wanted revenge against the Valori. Others struggled to believe that the changes were real. The wounds of history would take generations to heal. But the healing had begun. And that was enough. On the 7th day, Yara Chen opened her eyes. She found herself in a white room filled with strange machines. Valori medical staff surrounded her bed, monitoring her condition. Admiral Vrex stood at the foot of the bed, watching her with an expression that mixed curiosity and respect. "You are alive," Vrex said, "against all odds, against everything we understood about medicine and physics. You survived." Yara tried to speak, but her throat was dry. A nurse brought water, and she drank slowly before answering. "The God Spear?" she asked. "Exhausted. Its power core burned out when you blocked the beam. It will never fire again." "Valori Prime? Safe. 12 billion people are alive because of what you did." Yara closed her eyes. She felt tears running down her cheeks, though she was not sure if they were from relief or exhaustion or something else entirely. "Hope?" she asked. "My ship? The AI is intact. Your vessel is badly damaged, but our engineers believe it can be repaired. Hope has been communicating with us, helping us understand the technology you shared." "The gift reached everyone?" Vrex nodded. "Every world in the galaxy received it. Our scientists say it will take decades to fully understand everything you gave us. Some of it is so advanced that we cannot even begin to study it yet." "Good," Yara whispered. "That was what I wanted." She lay in silence for a moment, gathering her strength. Then she looked at Vrex with eyes that had seen more than any being should see. "What happens now?" Vrex moved closer to the bed. She was a warrior, trained to fight and kill. But in that moment, she looked almost gentle. "Now we rebuild. The Dominion is over. Something new will take its place. A government that represents all species, not just the Valori. A system based on cooperation instead of conquest. It will not be perfect, and it will take time, but we are going to try. And the humans? My people?" Vrex hesitated. "Hope told us about them. The millions who live in the galaxy beyond. They have been watching everything that happened here. Yes, they sent me ahead as an emissary. To test the waters. To see if this galaxy was worth saving. And what will you tell them?" Yara thought about everything she had experienced. The horrors she had uncovered. The battles she had fought. The impossible choice she had faced. And the sacrifice she had made. "I will tell them to come home," she said. "Not as conquerors or avengers, but as family. We have been separated for too long. It is time for humanity to return to the galaxy where we were born." Word spread quickly. The humans were coming. Not to destroy, but to reunite. The species that had been murdered 3,000 years ago was about to be reborn in the galaxy that had tried to erase them. Some were afraid. Old prejudices do not die easily, and there were those who still believed that humans were dangerous. They whispered that the galaxy was making a mistake, that the humans would eventually turn on them, that the gift of technology was really a trap. But most people felt something different. They felt hope. The humans had survived the worst that the universe could throw at them. They had been hunted to the edge of extinction. They had spent millennia in the coldest darkness imaginable, and they had emerged, not as monsters, but as something beautiful. They had chosen mercy over revenge. They had shared their gifts freely. They had sacrificed everything to save their enemies. If that was what humanity was, then perhaps the galaxy had nothing to fear. 6 months later, the first human ships arrived. They came through a fold in space that opened like a flower blooming. Thousands of vessels, large and small, emerging from the void between galaxies. They were strange and beautiful, designed by minds that had spent 3,000 years evolving in isolation. At the head of the fleet was a single ship. It was massive, larger than any station the Dominion had ever built. Its hull was covered in the history of humanity. Images of Earth were carved into the metal. Names of the dead were written in letters of light. It was a monument, and a vessel and a promise all in one. The ship was called the Memory of Earth. Yara Chen stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, which had been fully repaired and upgraded with technology from both civilizations. She watched the Memory of Earth emerge from the fold and felt tears streaming down her face once more. She had been alone for so long. The last survivor of the original crew. The sole representative of her people in a hostile galaxy. Now, finally, she was surrounded by her own kind. A communication channel opened. A face appeared on her screen. It belonged to a woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She was the elder of the human remnant, the leader of those who had survived the void. Yara, the elder said. Her voice was warm with affection. You did it. You brought us home. Not just me, Yara replied. I had help. From an admiral who chose peace over war. From rebels who believed in freedom. From a galaxy that decided to change. And from yourself. You carried our memory across the stars. You showed them what we are. You proved that humanity is more than what they feared. Yara looked out at the gathered ships, human and Valori, Kethmari and Orani, Silvax and a dozen other species, all floating together in the light of the star that had almost died. What happens now? She asked. Now we begin the real work. Building a new society, healing old wounds, creating something that has never existed before. A galaxy united not by fear, but by hope. The elder smiled. It will take generations. We will make mistakes. There will be setbacks and struggles and moments when we wonder if it is worth continuing. But we will persist. Because that is what we do. That is what we have always done. Humanity endures. Yes. And now, humanity will help others endure too. The formal ceremonies took place on Valori Prime, in the great plaza where the Imperial Palace had once stood. The palace was being converted into a museum, a place where future generations could learn about the mistakes of the past. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to witness the founding of a new government. It was called the Galactic Commonwealth, and it was built on principles that the Dominion would never have understood. Equality, freedom, justice, the right of every being to live without fear. Admiral Vrek stood at the podium, reading the charter that would bind the Commonwealth together. She was no longer a military leader. She had been elected as the first chancellor, a position of service rather than power. We, the people of the galaxy, do hereby establish this Commonwealth, she read. We acknowledge the crimes of the past and commit to preventing them in the future. We recognize the dignity of all sentient life. We pledge to resolve our differences through dialogue, not violence, and we dedicate ourselves to building a future worthy of those who suffered, so that we might have this chance. She paused and looked at Yara Chen, who stood among the human delegation. This Commonwealth exists because one woman refused to let hatred win. She had every reason to seek revenge, and she chose mercy instead. She had the power to destroy, and she chose to heal. She taught us that strength is not measured by the ability to kill, but by the courage to forgive. Commander Yara Chen, the galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid, but we can try to honor it by living according to the principles you demonstrated, by being better than we were, by remembering what humanity taught us. Yara stepped forward to address the crowd. Her legs were still weak from her injuries, but she stood straight and tall. 3,000 years ago, my people were murdered, she said. 8 billion voices were silenced in fire. We were erased from history, forgotten by the galaxy that birthed us. The Valori believed they had eliminated a threat. They thought they were protecting their empire. She looked at the faces around her. Valori faces, some of them descended from those who had ordered the purge. She felt no hatred, only a deep, abiding sadness. They were wrong. Humanity was never a threat. We were just another species trying to find our place in the universe. We had flaws, yes. We made mistakes. But we also had dreams. We had love. We had the capacity for wonder that exists in all sentient beings. What the Dominion did to us was a crime. But the greater crime would be to let that horror define us forever. We could have come back as conquerors. We could have repaid death with death. Instead, we chose another path. We chose to remember not just the pain, but the hope. We chose to hold on to what made us human. Our compassion, our creativity, our stubborn refusal to surrender to darkness. No matter how long the night, she raised her hand toward the sky, where the memory of Earth was visible as a bright dot among the stars. Today, humanity returns to the galaxy. Not as victims, not as victors, but as partners. We bring with us 3,000 years of hard-won wisdom and technology that we share freely with all. We ask nothing in return, except the chance to be part of this community. The past cannot be changed. 8 billion of my ancestors are gone forever. But the future is unwritten. And I believe, with all my heart, that we can write it together. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then the applause began. It started small, from a group of Kethmari who had been slaves until recently. It spread to the Orani, the Silvax, the countless other species who had suffered under Valori rule. And finally, it reached the Valori themselves. They applauded the human who had saved them. They cheered for the woman who had shown them what mercy looked like. They celebrated the beginning of something new. Yara stood in the center of it all, feeling the sound wash over her like a wave. She thought about her grandmother, who had told her stories of Earth when she was young. She thought about the 10,000 survivors who had fled into the void. She thought about the generations who had lived and died in the darkness between galaxies, keeping the flame of humanity alive. They had endured. And now, their descendants were home. That night, there was a celebration that spread across the galaxy. On every world, beings of all species gathered to mark the founding of the Commonwealth. They shared food, and music, and stories. Old enemies sat together and discovered that they were not so different after all. On Valori Prime, Yara Chen walked through the celebration alone. She was tired, bone-deep tired, but she could not sleep. There was too much to see, too much to feel. She found a quiet garden at the edge of the plaza, far from the noise of the crowds. She sat on a bench and looked up at the stars. "Hope?" she said softly. The AI's voice came from a small device on her wrist. They were never truly separate anymore, but Hope had learned to give her privacy when she needed it. "I am here, Yara. Did we do the right thing? Sharing everything, trusting them with our knowledge? I believe so. But the future is uncertain. We have given them tools. How they use those tools will determine what kind of galaxy this becomes. What if they make the same mistakes? What if new empires rise? New wars begin? Then we will face them as we faced the Dominion. With courage and compassion, and the refusal to become what we fight against. That is all anyone can do." Yara nodded slowly. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here. The void between galaxies, the endless darkness, the hope that had kept her going when everything seemed lost. "Hope," she said. "The original name for your program. The engineers who created you chose it deliberately. Did they not? They did. They believed that an AI charged with guiding humanity through the void needed more than just logic and efficiency. It needed something to inspire the humans it served. They named me after the thing they valued most. And do you feel it? Hope, I mean. Is it real for you?" The AI was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, there was something almost human in its voice. "I do not know if what I experience is the same as what you feel. But when I watched you intercept the God Spear's beam, when I saw you risk everything to save those who had murdered our ancestors, I felt something I cannot easily describe. It was warm. It was bright. It made me believe that the universe could be good. If that is not hope, then I do not know what hope is." Yara smiled. She reached up and touched the device on her wrist, a gesture of affection for the being who had been her companion through the longest night. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I could not have done this without you. And I would not have wanted to do it without you." They sat together in the garden, human and AI, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, the rest of humanity was making its way home. Ships full of people who had survived the impossible were returning to the galaxy of their birth. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges and setbacks. Old hatreds would not disappear overnight. The work of building a just and peaceful galaxy would take generations. But for now, in this quiet moment, there was peace. The darkness had lasted 3,000 years. But morning had finally come. And humanity, as it always did, had endured. Far across the galaxy, in the nurseries of 100 worlds, children were being taught a new history. They learned about a species called humans, who had been hunted to near extinction and had returned with forgiveness in their hearts. They learned about a woman named Yara Chen, who had carried the memory of 8 billion souls across the void and had chosen to save her enemies rather than destroy them. The children listened with wide eyes. The story seemed too incredible to be true, but their teachers assured them that it had happened, every word of it. And when the children looked up at the night sky, they knew that somewhere among those distant stars, the humans were watching over them, not as conquerors or judges, but as friends. The galaxy had been given a second chance, a chance to grow beyond its violent past, a chance to become something worthy of the sacrifice that had made it possible. And at the heart of it all, one truth remained: humanity endured. Humanity always endured, and now, at last, humanity was home.